Hey, what's going on, kids? So I wanted to try something a little bit different for this video. I wanted to try to speak a little bit more slowly. So I want you guys to let me know in the comment section which speed of speech you prefer. Do you prefer the more sort of, high pace, kind of quick rate of speech where I'm just kind of talking, just sharing with you guys everything that I'm thinking about off the top of my head, just kind of speaking like this? Or would you guys rather me kind of slow down and speak a little bit more deliberately and a little bit more in a controlled way? I'm very sort of flexible with how I can do things. I just heard myself on some YouTube videos and I was like, oh, I think I'm speaking a little bit too slowly. So I have to speed up, right? But I'm just not sure. It really depends on what you guys prefer. So please let me know in the comment section below whether you like the sort of fast speech or a little bit more slow and deliberate like this, okay? So let's jump into this, you guys. So when we're dealing with grammar questions on the SAT, what we want to do is before we read the passage, we want to make sure to take a look at the answer choices, right? And so you guys might ask me, well, Gym Teacher, why do we do this, right? Well, student, there's a very logical and a very practical answers to this, right? So the reason that I look at the answer choices first is because I'm trying to figure out what question type or concept is the SAT testing me on for this question. Now, you won't know that unless you actually look at the answer choices, right? So you don't want to wait till after you read the passage to kind of get a sense of what the SAT is testing you on, because it's just going to take you longer to read. It's going to take you longer to solve the question, right? Also, if you know what question type or concept the SAT is testing you on before you read, it's going to make your reading of the passage a lot more focused and a lot more intentional. In other words, you're going to be reading with a specific purpose in mind, right? And if you think about it, you guys, logically, that makes a lot of sense, right? We read for different purposes. Some people read for pleasure while other people read to learn. Other people read to kind of like build a skill set. Other people read to kind of obtain knowledge to help people out, right? So we have different purposes or different intentions, different ways that we read. And so it should be no different when we're solving questions for the SAT, right? We don't just want to do things the same way over and over and over again, because if you do that, if you do things like everyone else does, you're going to get the results that everyone else gets, right? And the average results that everyone gets on the SAT isn't very good. So I'm training you guys to be like top 1% thinkers and top 1% test takers. This is what the 1% does, right? In terms of how they take the practice tests, okay? So now if we take a look at these answer choices, what do you notice, right? So now this is where you guys, if you're brand new to the SAT, the very first step in your SAT journey is to get familiar with the question types. Like start to get familiar with, well, what are they testing me on? How do they test me on it? Right now, you might be asking me, well, Gym Teacher, well, how do you do this, right? Well, student, the first way or the easiest way to do this is by looking at the answer choices, right? And also by watching videos like this that really tell you, right, about what concepts or question types, right, the SAT is testing you on, okay? So if you take a look at these answer choices, well, what do you notice, right? We notice different punctuation marks. We notice like a colon for answer choice B, right, a colon. We notice like a semicolon for answer choice C. We notice a, period for answer choice D, and we notice a comma for answer choice A, right? So we know that we're being tested on punctuation marks, right? And now almost always when we're being tested on punctuation marks, we're going to be tested on sentence structure as well. So sentence structure is basically, how the sentence is built, right? Whether or not the sentence is structured correctly, okay? So now there are some things that you have to know to solve these questions correctly. So the first thing that you have to know is you have to learn your punctuation rules. You have to. I think that, these punctuation rules aren't difficult to learn, right? It's just that you have to take the time to learn them. So you have to self-study these punctuation rules. Now, I just created a video that covers all of the common rules that are tested on the SAT. I'll make one for other punctuation marks as well. But that's step number one, you guys, right? Is just learn your punctuation rules. And step number two, that's going to help you guys, right? Kind of solve, sentence structure questions correctly. Okay. So now what we can do when we know these punctuation rules, we can actually use our knowledge to help us eliminate wrong answer choices. we can use our knowledge to help us get to the correct answer when it comes to sentence structure, right? So what do I mean by this? Here's what I mean. So when you are, let's take a look at this answer choice C. Okay, let's take a look at answer choice C, which is a semicolon, right? Now, one of the rules for a semicolon, the most common one, is that a semicolon is used to separate two independent clauses. An independent clause is nothing more than just a complete sentence, right? An independent clause has a subject, verb, and a complete thought. Well, a semicolon's job is to separate two independent clauses. Okay, so now what can you do with this? Now what you can do with this knowledge is you can go ahead and check. It's not just enough to know, you actually have to know, how, right? So you actually have to apply your knowledge here and now check each side of the semicolon to see if you have an independent clause, right? This is part of the work, but this is how you solve the question kind of step by step, right? To make sure that you get the correct answer, okay? Now, once you get enough practice doing this, once you kind of build your knowledge base, once you kind of get enough practice and training under your belt, you're guys going to do this with ease, okay? But in the beginning, it might take a little bit of time, and that's okay. Everything worthwhile always takes time in the beginning, okay? Always does. So you have to be patient and you have to work through this. You have to struggle through this in the beginning. It's going to take a lot of effort in your brain. Like your brain is going to hurt sometimes, but that's good. It's good when your brain hurts because that means that you're learning. It means that you're learning. You're making these new connections and you're learning though, okay? So now let's go ahead and check here. So now you can choose which, side you want to start with, right? So I'm going to choose the information after the semicolon to see if we have an independent clause. So now a lot of students are going to ask me, they're going to say, hey, well, Jen, teacher, how do you know if you have an independent clause or not? And I'm going to say, well, student, an independent clause always has three things in it. Independent clauses always have a subject, it always has a verb, and it always has a complete thought, right? So you're actually checking for, well, what's this? Is there a subject in this part of the sentence, right? And if there isn't, then you know you don't have an independent clause. If there is, then you have to ask yourself, well, what's the verb? Is there a verb here? If there isn't, then you know you don't have an independent clause. If there is, then you have to ask yourself, is there a complete thought, right? Is there a finished idea? Okay, so I'll show you what that looks like. So if we take a look at after the semicolon here, we read, positing that all life's virtues derived from this absence. Okay. So now here, I notice this is not a complete sentence, right? Now, why? Because I notice that I don't have a verb inside of it. It's missing a verb, right? Now, it's missing a main verb, okay? So positing that all of life's virtues derived from this absence, what about it? Right? It's missing a verb for that subject. So this part of the sentence only has one long subject in it, right? Positing that all life's virtues derived from this absence is just one long subject, but it's missing a verb, okay? Now, how you know that is you have to understand different components of a sentence, right? So I know that ing words by themselves, they're not going to be verbs, right? But ing words by themselves are going to be like adjectives, or sometimes they act as subjects of a sentence, right? So if I say swimming is my favorite sport, well, swimming, that ing word acts like a subject of the sentence, right? And so I know that these ing words are not verbs. And so I'm just trying to figure out, well, where does it acts like a subject in this sentence? So now I'm kind of asking myself, well, where does this kind of finish, right? Pause. And so if you just kind of read, you can figure out where this subject ends. And then now you got to figure out, well, is there a verb that comes afterwards, right? Because subjects always have to have verbs in it if you're going to have a complete sentence. And so if you read it, you say, positing that all life's virtues derived from this absence, and then the sentence ends. So you're missing a verb. If you said something like positing that all life's virtues derived from this absence was a bad idea, then would be my verb, right? But then I don't have that in the sentence. So I know that I don't have an independent clause after the semicolon, right? So I don't have an independent clause here because it's missing the verb. So now that tells me that I can eliminate answer choice C immediately, right? And then from there, what you can now do with that punctuation rule, because you've checked now, you've actually done some analytical work, right? You've analyzed part of the sentence. So now you can use that knowledge to help you to eliminate other answer choices. Okay, so is there another answer choice that you can eliminate based off of your understanding that the information after the semicolon is not a complete sentence. You should say, yes, Jin teacher, right? There is something that we can eliminate. We can also eliminate answer choice D. Why? Because a period functions in the exact same way that a semicolon does. A period's job is to separate two complete sentences, right? But we already just checked the information after the period is not going to be a complete sentence because it's missing a verb, right? It doesn't have a verb inside of it. So we know that we don't have an IC. So we know that the period is also going to be the wrong answer, okay? And so now that leaves us with answer choices A and B, right? So now this is where you guys, I'm telling you, learning your punctuation rules, right, can help you guys to do this. Now I eliminated answer choice C and D with 100% certainty. Now next step is I want to teach you guys some very important rules for a colon, okay? So this is what 99% of students do not know. They don't know these. There's 3 rules for a colon. Now, once you know these 3 rules for a colon, you can now go ahead and check to see if the colon is used correctly in the sentence, okay? So the first rule, students might know, but the first rule is the information before the colon has to be a complete sentence. It has to be an independent clause, okay? That's the first rule. So go ahead and check that, right? So here we do have it. It does say that an Epicurus defined pleasure as the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul. So that's a complete sentence because I have a subject, it's Epicurus. I have a verb, it's defined. And then I have a complete thought, right? Where does this thought end? It says Epicurus defined pleasure as what? The absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul. That's where it ends. So I do have an independent clause. That's the first thing you're checking for. The second rule for a colon is looking at what comes after the colon. Now, this is what 99% of students do not know, okay? So you got to think about what is the function, right, of the information that comes after a colon. So in other words, what does the information after a colon have to do? Or what is its job, okay? So write this down. The information after the colon must always clarify, right, the information that came before it. Okay, so must always clarify the previous information. So in other words, the information after the colon has to hit back on. It has to refer back to what was previously mentioned, and it has to clarify it or explain it. Okay, now this is what the SAT is going to do. The SAT is going to kind of test you on, right, whether or not the information after the colon clarifies or whether it expands on the previous information, okay? So there's 2 different things, right? So this is what you actually have to check for, right? So if the information after the colon, if it clarifies the previous information, it's going to hit back on what was previously talked about, and it's just going to give you more of a specific explanation or a clarification about it, right? So an example of information that clarifies would be something like this. If I had a sentence that said, guys, I have one main goal in life. And then I put a colon here, right? So I have one goal in life. And then from there, boom, the information after the colon says balance, right? Balance my quality of life with helping people. Okay, so now this is where the information after the colon does clarify what was previously talked about. Or you guys tell me, what does it clarify? It clarifies what that one goal is, right? So what's my one goal? It's about balance, right? Balance. So notice how it kind of hits back on what was previously mentioned in a way that kind of clarifies or gives it more specificity, right? Now that's going to be different from information that expands on what was previously talked about though. Okay, so if something expands on what was previously talked about, it's not going to hit back on what was previously mentioned, but instead it's going to provide you new information in a way that just kind of moves the information forward, not referring back, but kind of moves it forward. Okay, forward. I'm trying to look into the webcam. Forward. Okay, so information that would expand on the previous information would be saying something like, I could say something like this. Guys, I have one goal that I want to achieve before I turn 50. Okay? So if I say, guys, I have one goal I want to achieve before I turn 50. Okay, now this colon here is not going to be used correctly. Well, why not? Because the information after the colon does not clarify what was previously mentioned, but instead it kind of expands on it, right? It builds on what was previously talked about, though, right? So in this case, the colon would be grammatically incorrect, right? It would be the wrong answer. It violates that punctuation rule because a colon cannot be used in that way, okay? A colon must always be used so that the information after the colon kind of refers back to what was previously mentioned. It doesn't build on or expand on it, though, okay? So that's the second thing that you want to check for. And that's actually why answer choice B is going to be wrong for this question. So this is a hard question because a lot of students don't know this, right? But if you think about it, positing that all life's virtues derive from this absence, you got to think to yourself, right? Does this information clarify what was previously talked about? Or does it just kind of expand on it, right? Does it just kind of build on it, though? And that's something that you have to kind of logically think about, though, right? And so we know that it doesn't clarify, it just kind of expands on it, right? By kind of telling us, right, that all of life's virtues derive from this absence, right? And that absence is the absence of pain in the body and pleasure and trouble in the soul, okay? So we know that it's not clarifying it, right? It's just building on it, though. Okay, so this is why the colon is going to be wrong, because it violates that second rule for the colon. Okay, now to go one step further for you guys, although you're not tested on it in this question, it's good to know because the SAT can test you on this third colon rule. So the third colon rule, you guys, has to do with what are called introducers. Okay, an introducer is basically words that introduce a list. Right, so what are the most common words that you guys know that introduces a list? That would probably be words like such as, right? Or like including. You guys have seen these words, right, to introduce a list of items, right? So here's the thing, you guys, yeah? If the sentence has introducers, then you don't use a colon, okay? So if you have a colon here, and if you have it doesn't matter if you have an independent clause before the colon, right? If you have an introducer here, like such as, this is going to be incorrect, right? This is a sad phase. It's wrong, right? Because in these cases, when you have introducers, you don't want to use a colon. That's just the rule for the punctuation mark. You want to use a comma, right? Or no punctuation sometimes, okay? But a colon would be incorrect. Okay, so that's the third thing that you're checking for, right? To make sure that colons are used correctly on the SAT, okay? So now we were able to cross out answer choices B, C, and D, which means that A would be the correct answer for this question, okay? Now, one more thing or two more small things to tell you guys is this. Guys, one of the best ways to get to the correct answer, one of the best ways to solve SAT questions is by eliminating wrong answer choices. Right? So guys, I don't have to have 100% certainty. I don't have to be 100% sure that A is correct, right? If I know that 100% with certainty that B, C, and D are wrong, I can still be very confident that A is the correct answer. Okay, so I don't have to know for sure why A is correct for me to be confident that it is the right answer. And that's because I can use the process of elimination based on my understanding and my knowledge of punctuation rules, and based on my, analysis of this sentence and my application of these rules in the sentence, that A is going to be the correct answer for sure. Okay, so that's one extra tip. The second tip is going to be this, you guys, yeah? Get used to this type of sentence structure pattern where the SAT likes to use this sentence structure pattern where they have an independent clause, an IC, then a comma, and then like a phrase, right? Like you're going to see a lot of times, like these ing phrases, right? So you're going to have a complete sentence like Epicurus defined pleasure as the absence of pain in the body and of trouble in the soul. And then from there you have a comma, and then you have an ing phrase, right? Positing that all of life's virtues derived from this absence. Now, that is grammatically correct. SAT likes this as a common sentence structure because a lot of students aren't familiar with it, and the SAT likes to test this, right? So just know that it's acceptable as a sentence structure. It is grammatically correct, right? And for now, you don't have to know exactly what it does, right? But we can talk about that in a separate video because I've already given you guys a lot of stuff to kind of consider, okay? So we know that the correct answer here would have to be A, but strategically, right, we talked a lot, right? So if you guys need to watch this video again, right, please take notes on the strategies that we discussed. Also, please write in the comment section one thing new that you learned or one thing that was really helpful for you that you learned in this lesson. And then also tell me one thing that you want to learn, right? If there's a question that you need the answers to and you don't know how to find it, or if there's something that you're struggling with, that you're having a hard time with, please write that in the comment section below. I read all of it, and I create a lot of these videos based off of your guys' comments, okay? And then lastly, you guys, please like and subscribe to this. Please like this video and subscribe to this channel. It really does help spread the word to more students like yourselves who really need and want quality test prep education. It'll really do me a big favor and help spread my message out to, more people who need it. I'm kind of on a mission. You guys can kind of tell I'm uploading these videos every single day while getting a PhD degree. And so simultaneously. And so I just really, want to help as many students as I possibly can when I have the time, I barely have the time now, but I'm trying to make time for it because I think that you guys matter that much. I really want the future of humanity to be in good hands. And I know that the way that I can kind of help shape that is through education. And so please help me on that mission, you guys. Yeah. So until next time, make sure to always stay curious, never stop learning. You guys got this. Take care.